We're talking about consumer protection trends in Bitcoin. As we have seen adoption grow and thrive, as we've seen more corporate treasury companies, as we've seen the political candidates from various parties embrace Bitcoin, there's this potential conflict that has arisen. So this next panel is going to be focusing on that, exploring some of the things involved. We have an incredible panel. We have Nick Spanos, founder of the Bitcoin Center in 2013. We have Colin Crossman, who is the business director of the Wyoming Secretary of State's office. And finally, we have someone who is near and dear to my heart, Preston Pysh, who is the co-founder of the Investors Podcast Network and GP of Ego Death Capital. And we all come to Bitcoin in different ways, but Preston Pysh is someone who has personally had a huge impact on me as a Bitcoiner. He was someone that I listened to and was like, oh shit, I finally get this. So please put your hands together for our next panel, Consumer Protection Trends in Bitcoin.
Okay, consumer protection. This one here just sounds a little boring, but we're going to try to make this one fun. And where I want to start off with consumer protection is I find a deep irony just in the name itself, consumer protection, when we're talking specifically about Bitcoin. And why I say that is the number one thing that I suspect Bitcoin protects us from is government stealing your hard-earned labor and work. And so the consumer protection of Bitcoin is inherent in the protocol itself, because if you hold the keys, nobody can ever take your money from you. And I really want to start there and frame it with that in mind, because as we discuss this and as we talk about all the nuance of crypto and Bitcoin and everything else, it quickly goes down this path of, well, maybe we should regulate this and maybe we should regulate that. But we oftentimes lose sight of this fundamental inherent thing, almost like a God-given right, that we can actually store and freeze our labor into this thing called Bitcoin, and nobody can ever take it from us ever again if you hold the keys. So I want to start there. If you guys have any other comments, I just want to put that out there to start this panel so people kind of...
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. This is what's important, right? Now, as we go from there, a lot of other things kind of come out of it, like a fractal, and that's where I think the nuance needs to go. Nick, you've been in this space for a really long time, 2013. Tell people a little bit about your background, how you came into this space, some of the things that you were doing, what it was like. What I want you to do is describe the wild, wild west of 2013 in this space so we can kind of wrap our head around.
I opened the Bitcoin Center in 2013, which was the first live cryptocurrency exchange. And I opened it right next to the stock exchange because I tried to rent a booth at the New York Stock Exchange, and they laughed me out of there. And so I started selling the coin in front of the place and stealing the traders and stuff. And then I rented a big, huge space next door on the ground floor. They have a movie, a Netflix documentary, Banking on Bitcoin. And that's what happened. I don't know.
What were the conversations like, though, back in the day when you talk to somebody and say, hey, I'm selling this imaginary Mario coin that's only available on the internet? Like, I'm sure the conversations were like, what in the world are you talking about? And
well,
a lot of people
didn't have the capacity to even listen to what we were saying, but we used whiteboards and we had courses, and the whole thing's education, because without education, no one's going to understand what you're saying or what you're doing. So we, it was rough. Oh, you're a drug dealer. That's gambling money, internet gambling money, gaming money. I mean, my family thought I went crazy because I had a couple thriving businesses, and I kind of dumped everything. And I was really perturbed because I came from Ron Paul. I worked for Dr. Ron Paul and his presidential runs, and his son, senior advisor on those campaigns and other campaigns too, other presidentials. And I really hated the Federal Reserve since 1991 because it made me a fisherman. That's another story. I lost all my money with the first crash in '87. I became a commercial fisherman, and I saw on TV that they said if Greenspan's briefcase was wider, we might not have had the crash. I go, who the heck's this guy? I thought there was gold behind the dollar, and I went to the library and learned all about it. And then I went into politics. It's a crazy story. I don't know what to tell you, but I kept supporting. I've been trying to take down the Federal Reserve since 1991. And
Well, so this goes to the point that I kind of started off with, which is this idea that the consumer protection of Bitcoin specifically is inherent in it. And because of this past and because of the experience and people telling you, oh, if the suitcase was only wider and the government would have intervened, then the market wouldn't have crashed and you wouldn't have lost all your... And so I think I know all the people I've interviewed through the years and all of the Bitcoiners that just kind of come at it from a different background, a different lens. You almost find that story at the heart of who the person is and why they're so passionate about like what it represents is because of the consumer protection that's automatically, inherently built into Bitcoin itself by being able to hold the keys. Let's go down your path, Colin. Tell people a little bit about yourself and how you came here.
Well, so I came to Bitcoin early on. I was mining it. I read about it in 2011, and I started mining it from 2011 to 2013. Then I sold everything because I wanted a motorcycle. Didn't look back until 2019. Got back into it, and then COVID hit, and I moved to Wyoming. It killed my businesses in North Carolina, so I moved over to Wyoming specifically to get into Bitcoin law because it's going down the road of the consumer protection. Wyoming has done something very interesting in that we now have a law in place where the state in a courtroom proceeding cannot force you to release your private key. Mm-hmm. So while they can do things like require you to disgorge the assets, because any judge can force you to pay, theoretically, but it's considered, it would be a violation of state law for the judge to order you to turn over your private key. That is considered compelled speech in Wyoming. So that's, fortunately Wyoming has been doing this for a while, so that happened before I got there, but now I work inside the state to help to take those kinds of things and go further.
I think people in the audience, they hear that and their immediate thought is, well, how in the world can we get that in my state? And how in the world can we get that at a federal level? Because it protects the individual. Is there any type of cooperation that's happening with Wyoming to kind of spread that message? Or do you guys see that as your own state's competitive advantage and maybe some other states?
Well, I think to some extent it is a competitive advantage, but I think that in these things, Wyoming has led the charge in a lot of ways. The LLC was invented in Wyoming in the 70s. We were the first state to have female suffrage. We are way out on front. So other states, I think, will start to see these things. I don't know if any other states have put that particular piece in place. I know that New Hampshire is coming at us, trying to get a DAO in place and a DUNA. We now have a DUNA, which is a decentralized, unincorporated nonprofit association. And so we have these new corporate entities that attempt to restrict and allow for individual organization and prevent excessive regulation. Mm-hmm. And so these sorts of things other states are adopting slowly, mm-hmm. but I don't know if the keys component is one that other states have picked up on yet, but other aspects they have.
Yeah. So we understand the power and the importance of holding your own keys and interacting with Bitcoin itself and not some wrapper on top of it. But I'm sure you've had just as many conversations with family members as I have and friends. And the one thing that I've learned a decade in this space is they're just not going to get it. Like, they're just kind of like, they're not. They're just like, oh, yeah, I have a trading account, Preston. I bought some of that Bitcoin you've been talking about for all these years. I think it's called IBIT or something like that, right? So I don't think that we're going to convince a majority of the population to interact with Bitcoin at its foundational level so that they have these unalienable sovereign rights that we all know are so powerful. But that doesn't mean that from a legal standpoint, we have people from DC here in the audience, doesn't mean that they can't adopt similar laws and regulations from a consumer protection standpoint to hold the BlackRocks of the world or to hold the Fidelities of the world to the same, what's the word I'm looking for? The same restrictions that the protocol itself provides. And what I mean by that is, let's say we take the IBIT ETF, right? That it has to be, backed in some type of way that cannot be rehypothecated on a trading platform like other Apple shares are rehypothecated on, Robinhood and all these others. So how do you guys think through the consumer protection side of everything that's getting wrapped on top of Bitcoin and what the messaging or the education or like what is it that we need to do to make sure that the legislators figure that out and adopt it as well?
Well, in Wyoming, we have the SPDI charter, which is a special purpose depository institution. Many of you may have heard about Custodia Bank, Caitlin Long's bank. It used to be Avanti. One of the aspects of that particular charter is it absolutely prohibits rehypothecation. Mm-hmm. So if you have these sorts of entities where rehypothecation is explicitly denied, that protects consumers from the creation of unforeseen paper Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. And so that, I think, is something that Wyoming has done, and other states are starting to look at those. Of course, we have to wait and see what the 10th Circuit does with master account for Custodia. Hopefully that could come down any day. Mm-hmm. That case was argued almost 8 months or 9 months ago, and so any day now we could get a decision saying, she gets it or she doesn't get it. We'll see. But those sorts of things for IBIT, for other entities, if you're a Bitcoin treasury company and you're not putting your keys out there in some way, how do we actually know you have what you say you have? Yeah. And so some way of preventing rehypothecation durably, mm-hmm. legally, so that if a bankruptcy happens, those assets aren't, like we saw with Celsius and BlockFi. BlockFi more or less was okay, but Celsius, a lot of people got completely hosed on that. So yeah.
Well, I think it's pretty bad what's happening because all this money is in, let's say, the BlackRock ETF. In the fine print, it says that they can take and move the money or the value over to any fork that they want, and I could foresee a future. And plus, they also said that 21 million isn't enough, one of their executives said. So I could foresee in the near future they could tout that there's quantum, there's collisions using quantum computing or something, and we're going to take this new fork and we're going to use this proof of stake Bitcoin that's quantum resistant, and we're going to have the member banks of the Federal Reserve as the master nodes, and no one can do anything about it. They can move that value as fast as they want. They could sell the Bitcoin, and they could put all that value into the new chain. And I foresee that as an attack vector that's much more destructive than, or much more plausible than a 51% with the mining. And then I've also heard in the conversations at the White House that, they're talking about KYCing wallets and OFACing wallets that are not, that haven't been KYC'd properly, and they have all these public mining companies now that, they're going to do what the government tells them, so they're not going to pull wallets that are not whitelisted out of the mempool and press them into a block because, they're a public company, and I foresee that in the near future. I don't want to foresee it, but I believe that could happen. That's one of the biggest existential threats that is coming up, I believe, for that. And I think there's going to be, probably someone's going to screw it up soon, and more people are going to learn about self-custody. So the more time some public company screws it up, the more people are going to educate themselves. And it's been, it's my job to teach people at the Bitcoin Center. Additionally, all day and night, we had courses, and we took all the tourists in, and we taught them, what the blockchain is, and in many languages over and over and over and over. And I know that if the education doesn't exist, then they won't be able to use it. And so the education right now is on the bottom shelf because or top shelf, I don't know how that goes. But education isn't what it's supposed to be, and nobody cares. Everyone's like, oh, I'm going to get a Lambo, I'm going to get this or that, and my bags are going up, and that's not what it's about. It's about a lot more than that. It's about individual freedom and individual sovereignty.
Well, to the point that you made earlier about the what the feds are doing, one of the aspects that has me very worried is recently, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had Andrea Gacki from FinCEN testifying that she wants to apply the Patriot Act to wallets, and whose consumer is being protected there?
It's almost going back to the irony of everything you guys are saying. It seems like you're concerned that whatever's being used in the name of protection is actually chipping away at potentially making it vulnerable to capture, is really kind of where you're going. And so the education that needs to happen with legislators so that that isn't the case, so that they keep their hands off of it. I guess you're saying the more that we can keep hands off of Bitcoin specifically, we're not talking about any of the other protocols, the better off it is? Is that really where you're going from a consumer protection standpoint?
Yeah. I think if you can keep just like with anything else, generally speaking, when government starts to get involved, excuse me.
It's my Jedi trick. Listen, the reason why we got involved in Bitcoin was because we know that government's flawed. Humans are flawed, math, the same math that puts you on the moon, lands you on a dime, if you believe that they went to the moon. Lands you on a dime, the same math that, if you're religious, it's God's language to express what's happening in the universe. You can't change it. That's what governs Bitcoin, and that's what governs our industry. And if somehow someone believes that they're better off, they're smarter than the whole economy, they're smarter than it, they can move economies around this and that, So these people have already, these entities have had such control that they don't want to lose the control that they've had. And we're in this predicament. I remember when, I opened the Bitcoin Center in 2013, everyone was trading peer-to-peer. I didn't even charge a fee. I'm an activist. I'm not whatever most of the people that were here, I'm sorry. I'm an activist, and I came from the freedom movement, and that's why I opened the Bitcoin Center right next to the New York Stock Exchange, because I wanted to promote freedom and monetary freedom and the monetary revolution. And what's happening is the opposite of that, and it's a little angering, and I'm trying to keep the curses, because it's such a nice stage and stuff. So, out of my vocabulary.
Couldn't somebody say, well, look at where it's come, look at where we were, look at where we've come. We're a multi-trillion-dollar asset at this point, so it's winning, right?
Well, I don't know. What? Because the price went up? What about actually using it for commerce? That's not really happening. People are just buying and staring at it. I mean, in Africa, they use it. I'm all over Africa, and the Gold Coast.
But to that point, I think a lot of people would say that in order for Bitcoin to fully scale, you're using it to go to the grocery store and pay. It first has to demonstrate intense store of value attributes, competing with global treasuries, and then after it starts demonstrating that, maybe in some of the more developed economies, it emerges first where it's being used as payments, and then it works its way into advanced economies where it's being used as payment. So maybe it's just the normal path, and I'm not trying to, I think, some people that are in the space and looking at what's happening, they're saying, well, it's just the normal path of adoption that it was always going to take, is that it would have to have these wrappers on top of it because most people don't even understand like the essence of what it is at
The
the
reason
core.
why people got into Bitcoin because there wasn't a wrapper, right?
Yeah,
So now there's all these wrappers for the people that don't understand that they can have self-custody and what Bitcoin was created for. So they're just going the path of least resistance, and that's cool. But once many of those things get not disrupted, but disturbed, then people might learn how to custody their own Bitcoin, or if they're going through a divorce or something, they'll learn, more people are gonna learn. So yes, so adoption's happening, everything's wonderful, your money's, you're gonna be richer, you're gonna get a Lambo, but they might not let you drive. You're gonna get a big mansion, they might move in 30 migrants in there to live with you. So you guys wanna get rich, all right, cool.
Keep it lean. Let's talk about this whole idea of innovation and the speed at which you got to allow it to happen versus protectionism. So Saylor was on stage earlier, and he started talking about tokenizing real-world assets, and really kind of went down that path. My personal concern, and I'm kind of curious how you guys see this, is when you look at Bitcoin and you audit the code base, it's extremely lean and is there to just do money and do it really well in a self-sovereign kind of way. And then when you look at all these other blockchains and protocols, they're trying to do many more programmability at the base layer, and they're compromised on security relative to Bitcoin. It's compromised on security and decentralization at the benefit of more optionality and things that it can do. But what you get out of that is an enormous amount of code base, an enormous amount of complexity, and I mean, I feel like I've talked to a lot of really smart engineers through the years, and I asked them, I was like, can somebody go in there and fully audit the code to make sure that there's no vulnerabilities for this base blockchain that everything else is going to be constructed on? And so it almost seems like that conversation is just not taking place. It seems like because there's all these stable coins and lots of money to be made over on top of this, that here in DC, it's kind of like, well, we don't want to exclude anybody, and like everything's innovating and we need to move out or else we're going to be left in the dust, which is also true, right? And you're caught in this situation where it seems like the world is moving and technology is moving so quickly that the fear of missing out or the fear of being left behind is making some of those conversations not happen, of sound engineering. What are your thoughts on Bitcoin versus some of these other blockchains? Do you agree with that? Like, what's your take? Should we pump the brakes on some, allow other things to go faster? How do you guys look at it?
So one of the things that I get concerned with, so people bring a lot of projects to me in my official capacity as one of the top regulators in the state. And things like the real world asset tokenization, pick a hypothetical example, the tokenization of a real estate title, your house. Well, one of the things that blockchain is, in general, is designed, and you see this in Bitcoin, is you send a transaction from yourself to another person, you can't unilaterally recall it once it's settled. And there isn't, not only can you not unilaterally call it, there is no entity that can unilaterally call it. So let's say you put your real estate title on the blockchain and it's on your Trezor, and somebody gets into your Trezor and transfers your house to their wallet. Do they own your house? No, because the court's not going to accept that. Well, now you have a situation where the blockchain and reality are no longer in alignment, and we call that an oracle problem, and when the blockchain has to refer to the real natural world, and I call it the anti-oracle problem when the real world has to refer to the blockchain, and the two things come out of alignment. So what problem are we solving for some of these things? When we look at, say, tokenization of a security, okay, that starts to sound interesting to me, because effectively that's just disintermediation of DTC. So that is an efficiency gain for civilization. But we do need to have a large amount of complexity in these things because they need to be reversible, because the federal government isn't going to allow certain types of transactions to not have KYC and have their finger on it. But that is a sea change different from what the problem Bitcoin is solving. And so just like any other Bitcoin maximalist, I don't see the two as interacting. You want to do these things, these are businesses, potentially securities or securities-like, or trading cards or things like that. They are not money, and we need to keep them separate.
Well, I think Bitcoin is the currency and the rest are projects. So let's say deeds, for instance. There was a lady that worked at the county center in Miami, I think, Miami-Dade, and she recorded her name on 1,100 deeds. So what they do, they just made another record and got rid of it, and the title company accepted that new deed. So the government or something, or a judge can record with a special key or some key that's on the website a new record, which would be the new record after some court case or something. So I don't see a problem with that. I think there's a lot of complexities in the new code, and that's the sandbox, and maybe a couple things end up in Bitcoin. But like I said before, the Bitcoin is the currency and the best blockchain to record something, and record a hash, and everything else is a project, because everything else is vulnerable either by bad press or bad actors or all types of things. So tokenization, real world assets, I don't see the deed's gonna take a while. I think the corporations, the Wyoming corporations are used for that, so you buy something with a Wyoming corporation, which you launch with tokens on the blockchain, and now you own the asset that the corporation owns. That was a quick fix, and it's being used all over the world. And it's incredible, and good work. And I don't know what else to say. I mean, real world asset, like paintings or something, where's the painting? Who's having custody of the painting? Who's having custody? Oh, we're gonna sell you this. Who has custody? And where does the custody go? That's the major question. Whenever someone says, oh, I want to tokenize this, I go, well, where's it gonna be? It's gonna be at my house. I said, well, that's not tokenizing something. That's just, maybe you're selling a token. It happened in Thailand. Someone, they had NFT for some deeds of some condos or something, and the guy just ran off with the money because people don't understand what it is to tokenize. I trust the Wyoming Corp. You don't have paper shares. You have shares right on the blockchain, and you can buy whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
Not your wall, not your work of art.
Well, the work of art you can buy, but where's the custody?
Yeah.
Is it going to be in the museum? Is it in a safe? Is the safe, the vault, paid for the next 100 years? I don't know. How's that going to work out?
My concern is just, imagine, let's say it's a green light for all this stuff to be built, right? And so all the building happens. It happens for 15, 20 years. And I don't think that we as humans have an appreciation for the amount of growth in software engineering that's going to be constructed on top of this, and what it means once AI is transacting, and what that load looks like, and from just a lines of code standpoint. And like Solana, for example, I mean, it goes offline. It would seem to be quarterly. Maybe I'm over exaggerating, but who turns it back on? The foundation goes in there and like tinkers with the code and gets it back online, and they send out a tweet, hey, all systems operational now. I just can't imagine building an entire global infrastructure of software and smart contracts on top of stuff that I haven't met a person that can go in there and fully audit and vet the software code. And I just don't imagine there's a lot of legislators out there that are also doing that for some of these things beyond Bitcoin. And again, I think Bitcoin is extremely lean and auditable in a very clean way. But some of the others, I don't know. And maybe that's my own bias coming out. But I think it's important to think about, not today and what's being built, but what does that look like 15, 20 years from now if our hands are off, everything seems to be working well, but it's built on quicksand, is my concern. But let's talk, for the last part here, so the tokenization of like Jake Paul, he's got his own coin, or the Hawk 2 girl's got her coin, and Trump's got his coin. And for all intents and purposes, and Michael, I think, laid out earlier today, if people were here to hear it, where he's talking about it could be an experience, like you always get front row seats if you buy this thing. To date, this is not what we've seen. It doesn't mean that it can't happen in the future, the programmability of that, and I'm not trying to battle that. What I'm looking at is from a consumer protection standpoint of a person that's literally just going out there and just straight up rug pulling somebody. Their intent is to rug pull somebody. And I would argue a lot of the stuff that we've seen to date, most of what we've seen to date is exactly that. People go out there, they know they can create something out of vaporware. I mean, literally, 2020, we saw literally rocks that were, it wasn't even like a nice picture of a rock. It was a terrible picture of a rock that was like 100 different shades of gray. And they were selling these things, supposedly these things were selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars with the complete intent of rug pulling. So how do you view something like that from a consumer protection standpoint? Is the person just so dumb buying that they deserve to lose their money? Or is this something, because I'm kind of in that camp, to be honest with you. But,
Well, so let's segregate it from the concept of securities, because I don't think these things are necessarily securities. I would agree with that assessment that buying and selling a digital rock is not the same thing as a digital share of a company. That said, one of the reasons why we have securities laws is because it was decided back in the 20s and 30s that these things were uniquely capable of fraud. And so maybe securities regulations aren't the appropriate way to look at these things because they don't have security-like aspects, but we do have laws on the books to protect people against fraud. Now, they're reactionary, not necessarily proactive. Maybe there's certain things that can be done for enhancing protections against that, but fundamentally, I agree with your take that once you have determined that the thing isn't a security, then it really is just caveat emptor. Like, you knew what you were buying.
yeah. Nick?
Well, I don't want to say it in this building because they might throw me out of it, but Joe Kennedy, back in the 20s and 30s, was the rug pull king on Wall Street. So, I mean, it's not just this industry, it's every industry. It's frankly, it's probably the people I pulled off the street on Wall Street.
No, there is a lot of that, yeah.
I should have never opened up over there, but that's human nature, yeah. And if it's not a security, you're buyer beware. That's what it is to be a human. I mean, if we're going to be held by the hand by the government and watched over and this and that, well, just put the camera in your room and chain yourself to the bed, and that's it. What am I going to tell you? I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
It's not my world that I'm going to live in, and I'm going to fight tooth and nail for it not to occur, even though it looks like we're going that way with the CBDCs and stuff.
Yeah, I agree, and I think looking at the mania that happened in the last cycle where all of that was happening to this, it's kind of like everybody that got rug pulled kind of learned their lesson because you just don't really see it happening nearly as much. And
well, we saw it in Bitcoin with ordinal inscriptions. I mean, was it 2 years ago? They went from nothing to people selling paintings and pictures for multiple Bitcoin, just because they had a low number in the inscriptions. And now, of course, we've had the argument about spam and all that, but by and large, it seems like that's kind of petered out and done its thing.
Yeah. It seems like they know they're speculators and are prepared for the blow on the chin. Any closing comments? Start with you, Nick.
Yeah, well, I think that we're at the edge we're at a fork in the road. Either we embrace the sovereignty of this new technology that was given to us, that we're the custodians of right now, and use it for personal freedom and personal sovereignty, or we allow the powers that be and the new equipment and the new software and the new AI and stuff to peer into our lives and control us, to allow us to spend our money if we're less than 1 kilometer from our house, or to allow us, well, you're overweight, you can't buy anything with a saturated fat because you're not going to be able to use your wallet. You know, all these things, because what I'm saying is, if we don't free ourselves with the permissionless open blockchain, you know, they're going to imprison, encumber us, and enslave us with the closed data silos they're going to call blockchain, and all you guys are going to be like, oh, the price is going up, the price is going up, and pull the wool over your eyes. And that's, you know, I don't know how to express what I'm thinking, but it's up to you guys, for your kids, your brothers and sisters, kids, or grandkids, all the way to the end of humanity, for how long that's going to be for us. But it's our job, you know, and that, you know, our ancestors are watching. They were driven into the dirt by centralization and, you know, currency that didn't mean anything, and they're trying to save their work across time in what I call voodoo paper, because they have lithograms of dead people, and they print as much as they want, and you try to hide some story, and then once in a while a witch doctor comes out and signs it, and you get all, oh wow, look at the value, and they can print as much as they want. And the big thing that bothers me is that they want you to run around and collect this voodoo paper during the year and give it back to them. I mean, these guys are printing it all year long. And then they want you to run around and burn your time, right? Collecting it and giving it back to them, or they're going to put you in a fucking cage.
I always say one of the most important things, and it's good that this conference is in DC, and that Bitcoin has now gotten to the point where we can have these conferences in DC and we can attract the legislators, because regulating this space is so fraught and so dangerous, because you do one thing wrong and you can screw it up. Yeah. And so we have to have, you know, and it's almost schizophrenic being a Bitcoiner first and a regulator second. Coming in and like, yeah, I see, but I don't want to break it. So how do we make sure that we don't break the awesome thing that we have, but we put enough guardrails on it so that there isn't a massive call by everyone else to break it? Mm-hmm. So most important thing, I think, for this audience and anybody who actually cares, keep on your legislators, keep on the regulators, tell them and educate them, and make sure that they understand, like, okay, you're making this decision, here's what it's going to do. Don't do that. Or do this.
Yeah. That's all we have time for, and I'm going to close with the same way I opened. The real consumer protection in Bitcoin specifically is the fact that the government cannot take your hard-earned labor that you have put into it to receive that payment. And they can never take that away from you. You are protected from that if you hold your own keys. And we need as many regulators to understand that hardcore, because you're a human first, you're a family member, you know, right after that, taking care of your family, making sure that they have what they need, right? And this is a powerful technology that enables that can never be stolen from you. And as much as we can do to protect that we got to do it. So thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, guys.